In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 112 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is curiosity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Ken Robinson. Curiosity is the engine of achievement. I'm very happy to bring you today's episode. Our guest is a gentleman by the name of Aaron Keith Hawkins. As a police officer, podcast host, father, and husband, Aaron definitely has his hands full. He shares some great stuff with us today about personal development and the importance of working hard and demanding more of yourself. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Aaron, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it sincerely. You having me on and sharing your show with me.
I appreciate you being here. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Definitely, for sure.
So the number one objective of our show, Aaron, is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. And I wanted to ask you if you had either a time in your life where you challenged and you persevered and you had the opportunity to give up or give in, but you didn't and you kept on going.
I definitely do. Yeah. I can share it if you're ready for me to go.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, all right. That moment has to be, several years back. Chris, we were talking before we started recording today, and I told you my original career before I got into podcasting and personal growth and coaching. My original career is as a police officer, which I still am today. I'm a captain here in Jersey, and early on in my career, it's funny. I kind of got into everything. I started young. I was 22 when I started out, and I had this particular time where I kept getting passed over for a promotion. I was young, I wanted to make sergeant, and I had all the on paper qualifications, if you will. The resume was strong, and I was teaching, and I was teaching at the police academy, teaching firearms, and everything seemed right. And if I'm honest, everything seemed easy at the time. And I got passed over the first time, and that was okay. And then it happened again. And, nobody likes to be told no when it comes to, being chosen from amongst a group. And after it happened a third time, I took it really, really hard. And as we all have at some point, we started making these excuses like that, it's easy to find the excuses that this isn't fair, or, I think I'm better than that person on paper, or why is this happening to me? And after a while, and I had some great friends and family supporting me, but I ultimately came to a conclusion, and it took way longer than it should have for me to realize this. And it's something I try to pass on to people as I do, fast forward, close to 20 years since that time happened. I have this belief that life knows when you're pushing and really trying to put yourself out there, and life knows when you're coasting. And I realized that in those moments and in those years, I'd been coasting. And all of us have something that we're naturally good at. If you remember, for anybody listening that's an NFL fan, you remember Randy Moss, Minnesota Vikings, one of the most prolific wide receivers in the game at the time. But one of the things people used to give him a hard time about was people would accuse him of taking plays off. And even though he was better than, at a skill level, people could argue that he was better than most of the people on the field. But for me, and I'm not saying this to knock Randy, because I don't 100% agree with all those arguments, but for me, hearing those accusations made me, for some reason, I looked at myself and self-reflected, and I said, all right, were you really working harder, or as hard as you could have? Were you really pushing your boundaries? Were you really, instead of looking outward and trying to compare yourself to everybody else, were you comparing yourself to you and what you were capable of? And the answer for me in hindsight was no. I was satisfied with how well things were. I was satisfied with what I was doing, but I wasn't intentionally waking up every day and saying, what can I do better to hone my craft, to be better at what I'm doing, to be better at the person I'm being? I wasn't sharing as much as I could have. I was taking what was handed to me. And once I was willing to accept that kind of forced lesson upon myself and stopped worrying about what everyone else was doing, it really changed the game for me in a lot of ways. And that was a moment where I kind of had to make a decision. You know, I don't know about you, Chris, but I've had a few moments in my life where I kind of snap my fingers and say, okay, enough of that. And it's time to change things. And once I did that, and I made that shift, and certainly haven't been, and I'm still, always will be a work in progress. But making that distinction between, being really good at something and being really good at demanding more yourself, there's a big difference between the two. And, I since that time, I've tried to make it a point to be that person that is demanding more constantly, not in a self-deprecating way, but in a sort of a self-identity way. Like, I will be that person that demands more of me, because by doing so, I'm going to be of a better benefit to everyone else. And that has transitioned, from that traditional career that I had, transitioned years later when I got into coaching and supporting other people to burst through some of the boundaries and the struggles they were having in their business or in their life. And it's been a game changer, man. It definitely has.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that backstory, and it tells our listeners a little bit about who you are and how you kind of look at things. And I think we can also relate different things in our life. And obviously you mentioned sports, and I'm a big sports guy myself, but whether or not you are a sports fan or not, it's the whole concept of working as hard as you can and pushing yourself. And you used a sports analogy with Randy Moss, taking plays off. And I appreciate you saying that, because it does lead to a lot of different things in life. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, Aaron, how do you personally define success?
Oh, success. I love that. I love that question, Chris. Success to me is simply achieving the aim or purpose that you have in any given moment, in any given context. And to clarify that, I mean, success to me, I can be successful in business and triple my income this year, but if my health is sliding as a result, or if my family life is sliding as a result, or if the quality time, or if my network and the people that I'm having in my circle of influence are suffering as a result of me chasing that income, then I failed. I can say I succeeded in financially in business, but I would feel like a failure in life if everything else suffered as a result, which to me is a good thing, because it creates this really cool challenge where you have to reflect and sort of find that, we talk about the work-life balance, the conversation that many people have. And I truly think that balance isn't a static thing. It's a constant, it requires constant awareness and a constant mindfulness. And to me, that's what makes life fun, because it allows you to have these seasons where maybe you're pushing and overcoming a health hurdle, one season in your life, you're overcoming a family hurdle in another season, or a business hurdle in another season. And it constantly allows you to be someone who is honing their craft, not just in one area, but in multiple. So to me, success is a very broad, covers everything, which is a contrast to a Google search. If you look up success coach in Google, you're going to get a ton of people telling you how they're going to make you a ton of money. But I think that's a very narrow-minded definition of success if it's only related to your craft. Don't get me wrong, man. I love a great income. I love having nice things. It's a lot of fun, and I get that. But not when it's at the expense of everything else that we're looking to achieve. So achievement to me, having the ability and the intention of achieving at all levels, that's success. That's the game. That's what makes life fun.
No, that's a good definition of success. So if you had to define yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Curious. And I couldn't always say that, but I think at this point in my life, curiosity is definitely at the forefront. And again, I say, I use the word context a few times, but curiosity to me, whether it comes to helping someone with a problem, helping myself with a problem, in almost any moment, any context, the more curiosity you have, the better off you are. And that's something I learned. It's something I've taken to heart. So I try to remain, I try is not the word. I intentionally remain curious constantly about people, about what I'm doing, about where I'm going next, about how my family's doing, how my friends are doing, where I can fill a gap for someone and be someone who can support. Without the curiosity, none of it happens. None of the progress happens if you're not willing to constantly be asking what you should be doing next.
No, it's important to always ask yourself different questions, and as you're a coach yourself, the importance is to keep learning and keep trying to improve. So one of the things we look to do is add value to our listeners on each show, and I was curious if you have either a daily or a morning ritual that you swear by.
I do, Chris. I have one I swear by. I'm grateful that you asked that, because it's been something that's been it's been helpful for me. When my morning routine when I wake up, it's funny. I use an alarm, but I kind of don't need it. You ever been there? You wake up and it's like 30 seconds before your alarm goes off. That's me. It's almost inevitable. I don't hear my alarm often because I usually wake up right before it. But I have a couple things I do. Number one, as soon as I wake up, before I even roll over or sit up, I go through a gratitude ritual. Nothing overly fancy. I don't write it out most of the time, but in my head, I challenge myself to not just label or list, but experience at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I've taken an extra step. I try to make sure it's something different than I thought about the day before. So if today it's, my wife and my daughter and maybe a client I have or a friend that I have or an experience I have, I'll change it up the next day and broaden that and try to make sure I broaden that list on a daily basis. Gratitude is number one. The second is, for me, it's meditation. I don't like to say there's tons of benefits to meditation. I won't take up the entire show talking about that, but I make sure I have my moment of my time to myself, some silence. I use an app for meditation from Deepak Chopra. It's what I've been using for the past about 8 months now. I've been using that one.
If you don't mind me,
don't
mind me asking, which app do you use? I use Headspace myself.
Okay, I love Headspace. I think it was one of the first apps I used. It's called Infinite Abundance. It's by Deepak Chopra, but it's awesome because it's got this shuffle feature, so it allows you to shuffle through different ambient sounds in a very brief verbal guidance. And then you can just, he usually gives a mantra that you use. Real easy. It's nothing. I'm not overly theatrical or very scripted with it. But just having that time to practice calm and just let the thoughts come and go first thing in the morning sets up my day. And it's funny because there are days where I've missed it and I feel it. Like I physically feel the difference if I start the day and I skip my meditation, I skip that silence, or even if I skip the gratitude, God forbid, that's it. So that's first thing is gratitude. Second is my meditation, and the third thing is spending a good 15, 20 minutes with the missus and just small talking before we start our day. That's it. Those 3 things that's my morning ritual and starts things off well.
No, I appreciate that, and we've had a lot of people that over the last probably month or two have talked about some form of meditation or gratitude and physical exercise. And it's interesting how you make sure you spend some of that 15, 20 minutes with the missus, because I'm sure that pays off and then some, because it's important to spend quality time.
Yeah. We all get busy, and if I'm not intentional about that, it's just our thing now. We don't even it just happens. Because we both value it, and it makes a big difference. I guess that's how I lasted 22 years of marriage so far. We've been really very intentional about things like that because it makes a difference.
No, definitely. What you put in and give effort to, it definitely pays off. And when you don't put effort or make the effort, obviously that's when you have the issues. So one of the things I know that as a coach yourself is I'm sure you're looking at different things, reading different things, and because we're always looking to inspire our audience and our listeners to continually improve, I was curious if you've read a book recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yes, definitely. I'd love to. I'm going to go with it's one I've talked about quite a bit, and there's a reason I have it, so I'm going to share it again. It's the 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins.
Great book.
And oh man, I love. I have to meet Mel. I haven't met her yet, but it's one of those things. It's not will I? It's just when. So grateful for her and the way her mind works and the stuff that she shares. But there's a couple reasons I love it. Number one, because it was unexpected. Like when I first heard about the book and the premise of it, the fact that when in a nutshell, the premise of the book is, she said when you have something that in your gut is the right thing you need to do, you just count five, from 5 to 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then physically move yourself in the direction of doing that thing. Now, me being somewhat of a pragmatist, I thought, you don't need 200 pages to explain that concept. So I was curious. Out of more than anything, curiosity made me pick the book up and think, okay, where else is she applying this, and how is she explaining this to the point where this created an entire book? And I'm so glad I picked it up because it is by far the best book I've read in the past 12 months. And I've read some really amazing books by some people I completely adore and admire. But that, for me personally, was a game changer because in my business and having my own show, there's a lot of things that I know I need to do. And there's a lot of times, for many reasons, I find myself hesitating or putting it off or overthinking my way out of it. And there's so many different aspects where reading this book has helped me apply that and change the way I interact with myself, change the way I just take action so much faster by going through that book and just physically mentally absorbing everything that she talked about. It has changed a lot of things. It changed a lot of things instantly. So for everybody listening, if you haven't read that book yet, please do. I highly recommend it.
Have you gotten her journal?
No, I didn't get the journal yet. Did you?
Yes, I've gotten it, and I've actually recommended it to some people. So
okay.
I would definitely, if you've not gotten it, at least take a look. I know they have them at Barnes and Noble, but it's interesting. If you like that book, it's got a lot of the stuff built into what you could do every day.
Okay, I definitely will. I appreciate that. Thanks for the share. Everybody take Chris's advice. Grab the journal and the book.
So assuming, Aaron, that the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what is the one piece of advice that you would have liked to have given the 20-year-old Aaron?
Wow. 20-year-old advice, if I had to give one piece of advice, am I limiting it to one?
Only,
I know the show.
Only one.
All right, because I know the show has to end at some point, so I could go on because there's a lot of advice I would have needed when I was 20. But one piece of advice, it would be that I would tell myself that where you came from and how you started has absolutely zero to do with what you're capable of and where you can go. That is not a lesson I believed or realized when I was 20. Definitely. Definitely. That would be it.
No, that's a great piece of advice, and I think it's something that even if you're 20, 30, 40, it's not when you start or where you started, it's where you end. And I think the reason I love you sharing that so much is that there's so much more that we all can do, and it goes back to your original point and about the conversation we touched on with Randy Moss is you can always do more. So I'm glad you touched on that.
Yeah, definitely. For me, coming up, I came from a place of didn't have much money growing up. I had wonderful parents. I was very fortunate, but we didn't have a lot of the money things and a lot of stuff and things in the house. But we had each other, and it's funny. It's sort of a double-edged sword because I was so grateful for my family and how I was raised and the people that raised me and the lessons they taught me. to me, it almost became, for a certain amount of time, it became a crutch because I believed that, we did this without money. Money doesn't mean anything. And my financial status is what it is. Like who I was as financially growing up and how successful I could be from the aspect of, what I could do for a living, how many people I could reach. I didn't think that having an impact on a broader scale was something I was capable of. However, the older I got and the more experience that I had, more experiences that I was able to dive into, I quickly realized that was just a story. Like I could have the gratitude for the way I was raised, but I could also expand and become more in those areas that I wanted to experience and have more things. I could have abundance financially, even though I didn't have it as a child. And there was nothing wrong with, if we touched on success earlier, I didn't have to deny myself success in one area because I had success somewhere else. So really opening my mind to the possibilities that you can, in so many ways, not to be cliche, but you can have it all. Like you can actually create it all. That was a big lesson for me to accept it as a principle. But once I accepted it, it changed a lot of things for me, and it allowed me to share a lot more with many people who were kind of going through the same thing that I was going through, but in different ways. There's some people that have all the financial stuff when they were young, but they didn't have the family, they didn't have the acceptance or the love that I had. And it's just the same problem in reverse order. But it doesn't mean things have to stay that way.
No, it's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. Wow, I love this question. I got to pick one person again, right?
Yes, sir, and it can't be me. It cannot be me.
Oh, dude, we're going to set it up. Dead person, one, or live or dead, one person to have dinner with. You know what? It would be Oprah. I don't know what the name just popped in my head. It would be Oprah. Because she has had such a broad experience and so she has had some of the most extreme experiences in her lifetime, both in terms of struggle and in terms of triumph and impact. So I would to have a conversation one-on-one with someone who has closed such a broad gap, from the extremes of the struggles of her younger years to the massive. I mean, to call her successful and impactful is ridiculous understatement. That would be a conversation I would be very grateful for.
It's interesting. I just finished reading a book called Own It, which is filled of Oprah Winfrey quotes from literally all throughout her life. So
that's awesome.
That would be a great dinner. So Aaron, what we're going to do right now is we're going to switch gears here into what we call our hot seat questions, and the only rule is that you just answer the first thing that comes to mind.
You got it.
So if you had one last meal and you could pick anything you want, what would you choose for your last meal?
Anthony's Pizza, Mount Laurel, New Jersey.
Favorite sport?
Football. American football.
Favorite team?
The Eagles.
Boo.
Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, I know. Sorry, man.
Favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption.
Do you have an all-time favorite book?
All-time favorite book is actually Mel Robbins just took the title last year. Man, I've talked about it on probably about 6 shows so far.
Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Favorite band or group or singer?
Coldplay.
Now, if you were in a foxhole, and you could only pick one person to have your back, who would it be and why?
It's got to be a buddy of mine named Matt. I'm not going to throw his last name out there, but Matt. Because if there's one person I could choose to protect me and my family in any moment, if I couldn't do it myself, it's him. I trust him with my life.
Oh, well, give me Matt's number, because if you trust him, then I need to trust him too.
He's a unique guy, man. Love him to death.
So before we let you go, Aaron, I wanted to ask if you had some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Definitely. Number one, Chris, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, for everybody listening, if you have not subscribed yet to Chris's show, please do so, so you get it in your feed on your phone. Subscribe and give him a rate and review. Chris, I know we talked for just a few minutes before the show, but I'm extremely grateful when I meet people like you who are sharing the things that you're sharing with the world. So that would be it. Please, everybody listening, make sure you subscribe to the show and seek out more people like Chris that are going to make your life bigger and broader than it is right now. Whether you feel like you're at rock bottom or you feel like you're at the top of the world, stay curious and always be filling your life and your mind and your social circles with people that are rooting for you and are in your corner.
I truly appreciate you saying that. And something that we've touched on in the last probably 2 to 3 months is the last thing you said was it's important to have the right people in your corner. And when you do, make sure that you flip the script on them and you support them too.
Definitely. I mean,
so last question, and I promise it's the easiest one for you, is definitely give a little bit of plug about your podcast, but also for our listeners that would like to connect or follow you, what's the best way for them to do that as well?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. My podcast is called Unbreakable Success. And you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. Most of the time, I'm sharing a story, sharing an interview with people that are entrepreneurs, people that are doing things to create an impact in the world, and sharing their stories of what they're up to, the lessons they've learned from the beginning of their journey to where they are today. And we try to make it we make it tangible so you can take something away from the show and apply it immediately to your own life, your own business. And to find me and see what I'm up to, contact me, ask me anything. I'll make it super easy. Just go to AaronKeithHawkins.com and you can find everything I'm up to right there.
Well, listen, Aaron, I truly appreciate not only your time. It was great getting to connect with you before the show, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Definitely, man. I appreciate you, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you for listening to episode number 112. Aaron is definitely passionate about personal development, and it's hard not to see and feel that passion. When he discussed his daily morning rituals, he had an interesting spin on his daily gratitude habit. He expresses gratitude to at least 3 different things each morning, but they need to be different each day. What a neat perspective, and it's pretty interesting how that gratitude work can compound over a week, a month, and even a year. Aaron was clear on why he felt it was so important to remain curious in all aspects of your life. In his closing remarks, Aaron was very candid with connecting and following people who are paying it forward for others. A constant theme throughout these last 40 to 50 episodes has been the concept of paying it forward with zero expectations in return. In closing, I would like to share a personal story. About 3 to 4 months ago, I was at a local diner eating a quick breakfast before heading to a meeting. A gentleman in his late 70s, if not early 80s, was seated next to me, and he looked both sad and lonely. He had a United States Navy hat and a U.S. Navy jacket, and it was clear that he had served our country in some capacity. When I finished my meal, for some reason, I was compelled to say something to him. Without any predetermined thought, I just extended my hand, and I said to him, "Thank you very much for your service." He paused and looked up at me with a tear in his eye, and he said, "Thank you very much, son." I walked up to the front counter to pay my bill, but something inside of me wanted to do something for that gentleman. I told the clerk I would like to pay for his meal, which I did gladly. His bill was only $10, and I left $15, and I asked the clerk to please not tell the gentleman who paid, and also to leave a $5 tip for the waiter. I don't share the story to brag or to boast, but I actually share the story because I didn't just walk out of that diner that day. I had a hop in my step, and I felt amazing. And the reason I felt amazing is because I did something for somebody else just because, and with zero expectations in return. I challenge each and every one of you today that is listening to our podcast. Do something today for somebody else. Do it just because, and do it without that person knowing. Do it with a smile, pay it forward, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.